So now let's take a look at the Assure model. And the Assure model is the model we're going to focus on for this course, and really focuses on the development of effective learning environments using media. So obviously Assure is an acronym, so let's look at what the letters stand for. And we have the A is Analyze Learners, S, the first S, State Objectives, the second to select methods, media, and materials, the third is the U is to utilize media and materials, the R to require learner participation, and the E is to evaluate and revise. And if you look here, you see some elements of behaviorism in there, you see some attributes of meaningful learning, and then some of the other issues related to media. Looking at the learners and analyzing the learners, we must consider general characteristics such as the age, the grade level, their position, social economic status factors, and other issues that are going to influence how they learn. And that is something to consider on an individual level. We must also consider the group as a whole. Look at specific entry competencies. There should be some way in the learning process in which you examine the entry level of your students and learners. One is through prerequisites. You might have a pre-test or something along those lines. Next, explore their learning styles is used here, but I'm not a big fan of the word learning styles. I prefer learning preferences. So look at what kind of motivational factors are involved. How are they motivated? Look at information processing issues. You may have heard the auditory, visual, kinesthetic learner model. While it's a simple model, well, we'll go with a simple model here, it does address some of the basics that you need to consider. You know, do they prefer to learn through hearing it? Do they prefer to learn through seeing it or manipulating it? So for the stating objectives, we need to look at the ABCDs of well-stated objectives. And this is something you'll explore in instructional design and continue the discussion in instructional development and other courses. But we need to have a clear audience, a clearly defined, observable behavior. We'll look at some of these in a little bit. The classifications of objectives, which we'll look at, and then objectives
and individual differences.
So looking at the ABCDs of effective and well-stated behaviors, the audience specifies the learners. The behavior specifies their performance they will be performing, an observable behavior. So learning, the students will learn, is not an observable behavior, and it needs to be a real-world skill. Relevance is a key issue here. Then we have conditions, which are equipments, tools, aids, or anything that may be used in the learning environment, and may also include environmental conditions, such as working in a group. So equipment might include with a calculator or something along those lines in a time frame. Environmental conditions would include different settings within the learning environment. So it might be in a small group or something along those lines. And then lastly, the degree states the standard for acceptable performance, and this might include a time limit. It might include an accuracy percentage, for example, a proportion, or to a certain degree of quality. And all of these are important to defining your objectives for the learning that is going to occur. It's also important to consider the domains of objectives, and we have our cognitive domain dealing primarily with subject matter and knowledge. The affective domain, in which we're looking at attitudes, the motor skill, so we're looking at manipulation and issues related to that, and then interpersonal, so we're looking at more social issues here. And it's important to include all of these domains, or as many of these domains as possible, in your Assure lesson. Looking at the selecting media, or methods, media, and materials, first, it's important to choose a method, and many times it's going to be useful to include multiple methods in your Assure lesson. Choose a media format, and again here we talked about how media matches with different audiences and issues related to that, so it's important to consider your audience when deciding on a particular media format. Obtain your specific materials, and also being aware of what is available and selecting available materials is also important. So you're looking at accurate materials and accuracy of various materials. Does it match your curriculum? Is it motivating and interesting? Does it address those attributes of meaningful learning? Is it active? Is it of high quality? So you don't want something that will automatically turn the learner off when they see it because it's poorly designed or slow or clunky or whatever. Is it effective? Are there any biases involved? And is there adequate support involved for your materials? Modifying existing materials. Now, it's taking things that already exist and modifying them to address your particular learning environment. Here, it's important to understand that existing materials aren't plug and play. You can't just take something somebody else created, a lesson plan, and throw it in and use it in your learning environment, because there are many factors, as we talked about, that need to be considered. So a number of modifications might be very necessary for this. And then designing new materials. So finding what's out there and using those for your available and existing materials, but then developing what's not there on your own. Obviously, there's no need to recreate the wheel, so if something exists that addresses your particular objectives and those issues, then use it. But if there's something not, then it may involve you having to design and develop it. Issues to consider here are support, time, and cost. Utilizing media and materials. First, it's very important to preview the materials, making sure that you have seen everything that you're going to be implementing. Preparing the materials, so providing a clear sequence, providing directions for the instructor usage and student usage of the materials, having methods for checkout, and other issues such as classroom management. How are students going to be grouped? There are a variety of classroom management issues that need to be considered when preparing materials for a K-12 kind of environment. Preparing the environment, so arrangement and the equipment, making sure everything is working, and if it's not working, how do you address that in the learning environment? Next is preparing the learners. Provide some sort of introduction in your lesson. Provide some rationale. Why are they doing this? Why is it important? Why do they care about it? Those sort of things. And then provide the learning experience. And here you will simply implement your assured lesson. Require learner participation, obviously, is very important. This gets at the active, constructive elements of meaningful learning. So it's important to not only have the instructional aspects of your lesson, but also to require that the learners participate throughout. And lastly, evaluate and revive. And here we're looking at a variety of issues, such as the assessment of learner achievement. Did they meet the objectives? Evaluation of the methods and the media. So are these instructional methods useful with this audience? Did the media, was it effective? Was it appropriate? Were there any issues that maybe need to be tweaked, etc.? Next is the evaluation of the instructor. So did the instructor do an effective job in implementing the material? And then lastly is revision, looking at the assessment of learner achievement. Let's say, for example, objective number 3 wasn't met by 75% of the class. I would look at the methods and media I used to implement or to address objective number 3, and then I would revise that based on feedback. And other issues of revision as you go through is did the instructor provide enough support in different areas? If not, then revise the directions for the instructor role at certain elements of the lesson. Well, thank you for listening to the Learning Instructional Systems and Assure model presentation.